Welcome back to Double Down University, and today we'll be going over the prospects board 11-14, and I will be doing the Monday Night Football matchup between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders. I will give you guys a 5-pick flex, or you can mix and match, and I'll basically tell you guys why I chose each pick. But first, I'm just going to basically rattle off the picks that I have, and then I'm going to go into detail on each pick on why I chose them. So, Dallas Goedert over 47.5 receiving yards. Miles Sanders over 69.5 rushing yards. Antonio Gibson over 5 fantasy in the first half. Terry McLaurin over 4 receptions full game. And Antonio Brown over 71.5 receiving yards full game. All right, so let's start off with Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert, the reason why I chose him is because they played Washington week 3. And in week 3, Dallas played the first half and he had what 2 or 3 catches in the first half for. Let me see if I can find it. I kind of There it is. Okay, so here it is. So he had 3 receptions for 26 yards and a touchdown in the first half. He kind of got a little banged up midway through the game and had a high ankle sprain, but he was able to come back in the game and he played a little bit, but at that time the game was kind of out of hand, so they wasn't really too much throwing the ball. They were more so running the ball and trying to run the clock out and trying to get home with a win. But as you can see, based on like snap count, so Dallas had in this Washington game, he had 44 snaps. And then when he got injured, Jack Stahl came in and he took 36 snaps from him. So coming into this week, Dallas Goedert is fully healthy and coming off of one of his best games as a Philadelphia Eagle. And he had 100 yards receiving before the bye week, 8 catches, 100 yards receiving, and a touchdown. And then the week before, he had 6 catches, 64 yards receiving. So, and they're starting to target him a lot more. As you can see, like after the Washington game, his targets have really increased. Like he's getting 6 or more targets in every game. So I think this plays well into his hands, especially volume wise. Like that's the thing you want to kind of target in these matchups is target volume, because the more times, that's more opportunity. The more times it goes away, the more opportunities he has to be able to make plays and be able to get you over that number. So that's my first pick. And then if you want to go and dig a little deeper, you can go into his head-to-head stats with Washington. He has 7 receptions in 2021, 9 targets, 135 yards, and then in 2020 he had 8 receptions, 9 targets, 101 yards, and then late last year or early this year in January, he had 6 receptions, 7 targets, and 71 yards. And then a lot of these games I kind of take with a grain of salt because we touched on the injury the first time they played in September where he got hurt. So, and then a lot of these games right here, 2018, 2019, he had to split carries with Zach Ertz when he was a member of the Philadelphia Eagles. So I kind of take those with a grain of salt. So, but I really, really like Dallas Goedert going over that number. The second pick was Miles Sanders over 69.5 rushing yards. I like this pick because it basically goes along with the game script, because if the Eagles are going to win by 11 or more points, they're pretty much going to run the ball and try to run the clock out. So I really, really like Miles there. And as you see, like recently, he has been really, really good, and they're featuring him more often ever since the Jacksonville game. As you can see, like Jacksonville game, he had 27 rushing attempts, 15 rushing attempts against Arizona, 18 against Dallas, 9 against Pittsburgh. That game was kind of out of hand early. So they kind of actually in the Pittsburgh game in the fourth quarter, they took all the starters out and just played backups most of the majority of the second half of the game. So that's another reason why his rushing attempts was low against Houston. It was a close game down into like the end of the game. So they gave him a lot of touches. So the key thing is are they going to feed him, and is Jalen going to eat into his rushing attempts and rushing yards? But I believe that they're going to feed Miles because he's on the tear right now. He's doing what he's supposed to do. He's running behind his offensive line, and the Eagles have the best offensive line in football. So, and a lot of what they do is predicated off of the RPO action. So the read option of whether Jalen going to pull or if the end crashes down, he's going to take it and go around the edge. So it depends on how the defense plays it too as well. But I believe Miles will have a big day today. So that's another reason why I chose that pick. But moving on to the Antonio Gibson fantasy score over 5. Reason why I like this is kind of a safety blanket for the first half. And what I told you guys earlier is that the spread is kind of high with the game because they believe the Eagles are going to, run away with this game. And that's the reason why I targeted the first half, especially with running backs, because if the game gets out of hand, later on in the game, he's not going to get many rushing opportunities. So another reason why I targeted the first half. And with Gibson, and I like to look at, when they change quarterbacks. So Tyler Heineke has stepped in since week 7. So I kind of look at week 7 on as far as when I'm looking at, numbers for each player. And so with Gibson, he's had a steady amount of carries or a steady amount of offensive snaps. So he's 28 snaps, 22 snaps, 34 snaps, and he's getting, 10 attempts, 7 attempts, 11 attempts, so a lot of time that's consistent to me. So as opposed to Brian, Robinson, where if I can kind of show you guys Brian Robinson's snap count. Let's pull up Brian Robinson. If it allows me to. Here it is. Okay, so with Brian Robinson, if we go to his game log, but matter of fact, we can just scroll down here. So within the last 4 weeks, Antonio Gibson has been out. Well, Robinson has gotten a couple more snaps. Well, here it is. So since Green Bay, he's had 34 snaps, 15 snaps, and 28 snaps. And the key thing here too is last week they were without J.D. McKissic, and that's another reason that factored into my decision of taking Antonio Gibson, because being as though J.D. McKissic is out, then Antonio Gibson is getting a lot of the receiving targets as far as, out of the backfield, getting more touches as a receiver as opposed to Brian Robinson. They kind of use Robinson as more of a between the tackles type of running back and not more so as a pass catcher. So I think, Gibson steps into McKissick role. As you can see, J.D. McKissic is out. And then also they have another running back, Jonathan Williams, who's questionable. So that only makes our case stronger for Gibson as far as the fantasy wise, because even if he just gets a 2-yard rush for a touchdown, he will cash his fantasy because a rushing touchdown is 6. So that's another reason. Let's move on to Terry McLaurin. So Terry McLaurin, 4 receptions, over 4 receptions. I really like this one, and I'll kind of show you guys why. So since Carson Wentz has got hurt and Tyler Heineke has taken over, I really, really love this because, as you can see, like, he's getting at least minimum 8 targets a game in the last 3 weeks since Taylor Heineke has taken over, and he's really putting up really, really big receiving numbers, and he's getting 5 catches, which is more. That's the number that we want, and he's not even pushing the total. He's going way over. So he's getting 5, 6, and then 5. And then if you want to take it a step further and go back and looking at his head-to-head against the Eagles, every time he has faced the Eagles, he's had at least 5 catches in every game except for one, which was back in 2021. So that to me, that makes it a strong case for Terry McLaurin. And then I also was listening to a press conference of Ron Rivera before, I think it was Saturday press conference or a couple days ago, and he was talking about how Terry McLaurin has really improved as a wide receiver, and the fact that he finds open zones to sit into. And the Eagles play a lot of zone coverage on the back end because their front four is so good at getting home. So they basically play, let their front four attack, and then they just sit back into zone to kind of read the quarterback's eyes and kind of attack the ball. That's why they lead the league in interceptions. and turnovers as well because of tip balls or just when the quarterback is getting the ball out when he doesn't want to, ahead of time when he before he wants to throw the ball. So I really really like receptions over yards because yards could be tricky because sometimes, especially as we look back, like in week 3 when he played against the Eagles, he had 3 catches for 26 yards and a touchdown. So he didn't go over the 4 receptions, but he had 4 targets. And then this was back when Carson was playing. And then another backstory to the game is if you really watched and paid attention to that week, the Eagles had like 7 or 8 sacks, something crazy. So they wasn't able to have time to really get the ball out. And one of the benefits of Taylor Heineke, to me personally watching him play, is that he's a more mobile quarterback than Carson Wentz is in this stage in his career. So he would be able to kind of extend the play and be able to get it to him downfield. And then all we need is receptions. We don't need anything as far as yards wise, but I do like his yards as a small consideration that plays into the game script as well. If they're going to be down, more than likely they're going to have to throw the ball a ton, so that plays into it. So that's my Terry McLaurin pick. Let's move on to the fifth and final one, which is AJ Brown. So AJ Brown, he's just, man, he's dominating. And as you can see, like these numbers is ridiculous. Like the percentage of team targets, like he's getting 30% of the targets to receivers on this team, or just not even receivers, eligible receivers on this team. And then his average yards per route run is 2.85, which is amazing. He's targeted on 27% of the routes that he's run. His air yards per game is 93 yards per game, which is ridiculous. So he's lighting the league on fire. And then also when you look into the Commanders, I almost called them the Redskins, but when you look into the Commanders defense, like their cornerbacks, I don't think they have anybody man for man that can match up with them one on one or even in zone. I feel like he can sit in zones and be able to pick, defenses apart that way too as well. And then he's also best friends with the quarterback. So like you look at his targets, like look at his targets: 13, 8, 10, 7, 7, 8, 10, 6. So he's getting a lot of targets, and his yards is it's up and down here and there. Like I know against Arizona, he didn't really wasn't featured too much into the offense because they were trying to run the ball and they were trying to spread it around to other players like Dallas Goedert and Miles Sanders and everything. So I really really like that. So I like AJ Brown's receiving yards over 72 and a half, and those are my 5. I appreciate you guys. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.